Hey and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be taking my first steps on my Grimdark journey by painting up this awesome miniature by Flesh of Gods Miniatures. I'm starting off by priming the miniature black using the airbrush. For this I'm using the Army Painter black primer, and then I'm going to give it a zenithal highlight of grey. I was going to use white, but I didn't want to go too light as I'm aiming for that grim dark look. So for this model I wanted to push into that grim dark vibe of muted tones and rough textures. I started off with the skin, laying down a base of deck tan. It's got a pale, almost lifeless tone, which is perfect for something that looks like it's spent most of its time in the dark. For the cloth on the legs I use Cayman green. It's a nice desaturated green that has just the right amount of contrast without being too clean or bright. I'm avoiding anything too vibrant here, as it's all about sort of a gritty, realistic look. Next I went in with Gory red for the straps. You'll see them around the arms, the legs, the sword handle, and I also use this for the tongue. It's a nice dark fleshy red, and when it's dry it gives sort of a sense of worn leather and dried blood, so I thought it'd be a cool colour to use. The rope and leather elements were base coated in dark rust. It has an earthly, worn quality that really sells the age and the filth, especially when we go in with the oils and the washes to really sort of tone it down. For the skulls on the miniature, I used Ivory. It's a subtle off-white that feels old and bleached rather than bright. The nails and teeth got a touch of sun yellow, just to bring out that sickly, grimy hue that contrasts really nicely with the pale skin. Next I'm going to be moving on to the metallics, and I'm going to start off by using Vallejo dark gunmetal, and that's going to be mainly for the sword and the chains on the miniature. This metallic's quite dark and I want to keep it that way because later on, after I've added a few of the effects, I want to go in with a bright silver and add some chips and some scratches, and it'll really make this pop. Then onto the armour. I used Tinny Tin by Vallejo. It's got a deep coppery metal tone that's going to be perfect for weathering and sort of like corroded plate armour later on. For the base I kept it simple but effective. Started with Desolation Brown from the Army Painter's Speedpaint range. It gives a nice rich earthy tone, perfect for that grim muddy battlefield look. Then I'm just going to move on to the metals and a bit more texturing. To start building up that rust I use Typhus Corrosion by Citadel. It adds that gritty textured layer over the metal areas, great for breaking up the smooth surfaces and giving everything that corroded, worn down feel, and it's the perfect base to start building up the rust tones across the miniature. With the base coats and some pre-weathering done, it's time to unify everything and start building the grimdark atmosphere. I mixed a 50-50 blend of burnt umber and sap green oil paints, thinned down with some odourless thinner, and then I'm going to use it across the whole model to make a unifying wash. This will help bring all the tones together and also give everything a sickly, earthly tone. To check the tone and consistency before committing, I used a texture palette I made. I'll link the video on how I built it down in the comments if you want to check it out. Once applied, I used a reductive method, a cotton bud and some thinner to remove the wash from the raised edges and the high points. This keeps the shadows dark and the edges slightly cleaner. For the skin tone, I mixed violet and deep red, again about 50-50. This will sort of make it look a bit more bruised and unnatural. I let this fully dry, then again use a cotton bud with the thinner to pull back from the highlights. To push the depth a little further, I added cerulean blue to the raised veins, just enough to make the skin look thinned and almost translucent. Next up was an oil wash using burnt umber. I kept this one a little thicker. I wanted the cloth to look heavy, soaked and muddy. I used the same wash over the silver metallics to start building up that rust and dirty look. Again, I used the reductive method to feather it into the green cloth giving it a nice aged transition. I wanted to try something I haven't done before with the bronze armour. I scraped down some green chalk pastel into a powder and mixed it in with the Vertigris effect paint. When it dried, it gave me a slightly chalky oxidised texture. I used a cotton bud as I was applying this mixture to clean up any of the areas where I didn't want it. For the rust, I grabbed the rust effect paint and stippled it on with an old brush across the sword and the chains, keeping it as random as possible, and it would also give me a nice texture. To add some sore, irritated skin tones, I mixed deep red and white about 50-50 to make a rich pink. I used this around the fingernails, toes, and any other areas that wanted to look a bit more sore. Then after that was applied, I went back in with a pure burnt umber wash over the hands and a few other parts of the skin to reintroduce that grimy, filthy tone. With the oil washes being done, I'm now going to move on to some highlights, and I'm going to keep them very minimal. The first one I'm going to use is Vallejo Silver, and I'm going to use that on the sword to give it an edge and just dot and scratch around on the metal just to add a bit more texture, like it's been sort of battle damaged as such. Then I'm going to give the nails and the teeth a highlight with Ivory, just on the highest points for that cracked, aged look. I also added a very subtle highlight to the ropes and straps using burnt red. Using the same Ivory, I just gave the base a very light dry brush just to pick out the very edges of the stones. For some final character, I added some blood splatter. I used an old toothbrush, dipped in the blood for the blood god by Citadel, and flicked it across the miniature with my thumb. Super satisfying, and it sells the brutality of this model. And the final detail I'm going to add is I want to add some hair. So I got some tweezers and I teased apart the end of a cotton bud, added a little bit of Mod Podge to the area I wanted it, and then glued the fibres to the head. And with that, the model's finished. I'm really happy how it turned out. Gritty, gross, and totally grimdark in my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Really means a lot to me. It's a very small channel and every little helps. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.